Hello, hello, Kelsey. Welcome to the MomForce. I'm so happy you're here.
I am so genuinely thrilled to be here. I am such a fan. I love the podcast. I love Chatbooks. So thank you so much for having me.
Well, the feeling is mutual. I'm a huge fan of yours. And are you ready to enter the chat?
I am ready to enter the chat. Bring it on.
Bring it on. All right. Will you start by just telling our audience a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So my name is Kelsey Nixon. I was born and raised in northern Utah. I went to BYU and pursued a degree in broadcast journalism. And while I was there, I got this crazy idea that news didn't feel like my calling, but food television felt like my calling. And it was right when Food Network was kind of catching in popularity. And so I had this crazy idea to start a cooking show at BYU. And it was fresh off an internship with Martha Stewart Living, where I got to work on a cooking show. Needless to say, I did this cooking show at BYU for a couple of years that is so embarrassing to watch now. But at the time,
I've
was
seen clips, and it is the cutest thing ever.
it's so you gotta start somewhere, right? And anyways, great blackmail material in those clips. But I did this, and it's worth mentioning in my story because it was so pivotal in me developing passion for food and family. And I ended up going to culinary school afterwards. And then while I was in culinary school, I was cast on a reality food competition show called Food Network Star, where people were competing to win their own cooking shows. And I mean, break of a lifetime. I was 23 when I got on the show, and I didn't realize it, but I was certainly cast as the girl who thought she knew what she was doing, but really had no idea what she was
Oh, my
doing.
goodness.
But I did the show. It was great. It really got my foot in the door. I didn't win the show, but I did well enough. And as a result from the show, Bobby Flay, who was a judge, ended up thinking that I had something special, and his production company ended up producing a show for me that ran for 7 seasons on Food Network and Cooking Channel. And it just kind of kicked off this decade long experience of being a cooking show host. So that was so exciting. It led to writing a cookbook and doing a line of cookware and whatnot for the Home Shopping Network. And all while this was happening, I was building my family, which was tricky and challenging and beautiful and all those things at the same time. But yeah, so I my background was in food media, and now I spend most of my time helping families get dinner on the table through a company I have called Recipe Club.
Yep. And I can hear in the background, darling Nora. Tell us a little bit about your kids. How many kids do you have?
I have 3 children. So I have a 10-year-old Ollie, a 5-year-old Nora. Oh, she's 6 now. Oh my goodness. A 6-year-old Nora and a 2.5-year-old Penny. So I am in the trenches of
Yeah.
motherhood, and it's the best of times and occasionally the worst of
We
times.
all can relate. But I want to dig into everything around meal planning because that continues to be a hot topic in our MomForce community. And my kids are actually be so jealous that I'm talking to you because they are huge Bobby Flay fans. For some reason, every time we go on vacation, we're in a hotel, the TV goes on immediately to the Food Network. We love Guy
Yes.
Fieri. We love Bobby Flay. I love that you got to work with them, and I'm excited to get your take on some of these questions. Are you ready to dive in?
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Okay, well, the first one is about timing of dinner. And I know this is unique to every family, but Amber from the MomForce Facebook group, she said, I'm super curious about what time you have dinner as a family. Our kids are so young, 3 years and 8 months, and they eat early and go to bed so early that my husband misses dinner often. And I'm wondering, how similar are we to others with this?
Okay, well, I think she is so similar. I think timing is actually one of the most challenging parts of dinner. And what's so tricky about this is that you're right. It has to do with the makeup of your family. We all know that feeding toddlers versus feeding teenagers are two wildly different experiences. And what's interesting is that throughout the calendar year, things change too, because you
Yep.
may have periods where you have kids that are in lots of extracurricular activities, and when they're home for Christmas break, or summer is feeding your family in the summer is so different than feeding your family during the school year. So I think it's important to realize that this might be a question you have to ask yourself and reevaluate often. So for Amber, I have been there, and not too long ago, where it's tough to create that idyllic family situation where you all sit down and break bread together when you have toddlers and babies. And I think you first just need to give yourself a break that might not happen. That's probably not going to happen, and that's totally normal.
For this
When
season of life. I like to
For
look at it as
this,
seasons, right?
yes, yes. But one thing how I would approach this and how I approached this when I was in a similar situation is I think it's totally normal to feed your kids early. Nobody likes a hangry child, especially during the witching hour. So when your kids are ready to eat, I would totally feed them earlier. And I don't know about your kids, but my kids thrive on a routine and a schedule. So I typically would say, I don't know, whatever it is for your kids. 5:30 is when the kids eat. If dad's home, great. If mom's home, great. Whatever it is, the kids are going to eat at 5:30. And one thing I think we lots of times dinner becomes this really just it's a mundane thing. People have to eat. It's a mundane thing where people just have to eat. But I think the most important aspect of dinner is actually connection. So whether or not you have old enough kids to connect or not, in your situation, I think it's awesome to kind of connect with your husband, right? And if that
Yeah.
means eating dinner at 8:30 after the kids have gone to bed, that can be a really special time for you guys to sit down, break bread together, go over the day, and don't beat yourself up for not having your 3-year-old and your 8-month-old there. So in this season of life, I would actually suggest splitting the two dinners up, feeding the kids separately, and then having dinner with your partner. But it's going to change all the time, and I think that's one reason meal planning can be frustrating, is that it's not one size fits all. Um, Even for different times of the year, like I said. So you have to be willing to adapt, and that's how you're going to find the most success.
Yep. There was a season in our family's life where my husband worked very late and traveled a lot, and so when my kids got home from school, we had dinner at, like, 4 p.m. because
Yeah.
I got tired of doing the whole snack routine and then doing
Mhm.
dinner by myself and then having to, feed my husband. So we just did dinner when they got home from school, and then if dad was home while they were still awake, they had snack with him, and sometimes they just missed him, but that was totally okay, and I loved being able to just, like, flip the script. We don't all have to be sitting around the
Nope.
table. The point is people need to be fed, and I love that you
Yes.
brought up connection, and so I was able to connect more with my kids talking about after school around our early dinner and then connect later with my husband, so
Yeah.
so
I
many
have a
good thoughts.
Yeah, I have a really good friend who has a kid that just started playing competitive travel soccer or whatever. And her life is crazy now, and they have to drive quite a ways to get there. And she told me, I laughed at first and thought, you are crazy. And now I totally think it's a brilliant idea. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, they have dinner in the car.
Yep.
And she's like, that's just the way we have to do it, because she'd reached out and said, I need some car dinners. What are some dinners I could serve in the car? And that's why I thought it was so funny. But one thing we talked about is her and her family do a similar thing that we do, where we share sweet and sour every day at the dinner table. That's or wherever we're at. And so she's like, we go through the same steps that we would at a dinner table. We just do it in the car.
Yeah.
So I think that's really nice too, is having dinner. Yes, it's about the food and filling those empty bellies, but think about the other things that you do when you sit down. Maybe you say a prayer or like a statement of gratitude, or maybe it's sharing the high and the lows, or maybe it's going over the schedule for the next day. And that can happen at your dinner table. It can happen at a kitchen island. It can happen at the baseball park
Yep.
if your son's playing, or it can happen in the car. So
Well, we've done the car dinners, we've done the
yeah.
baseball park dinners, and I love keeping kind of those routines. We also do highs and lows in our family.
Yeah.
I'm down to just 2 of my 7 kids living at home, and last night at the dinner table, we went through our highs and lows, and I was just like, I'm so grateful for
It's
those little
so
traditions
great.
that bind us together. All right, next topic, snacks, because you can't talk about meals with kids without talking about snacks, timing of snacks. How many snacks? Should they have access to snacks? Anyway, this is a question from Nina. She says, if I hear my 3-year-old tell me she's hungry again, we literally just had lunch 45 minutes ago. She had a homemade Lunchable. So crackers, cheese, ham,
Yeah.
strawberries, broccoli. She ate 85% of every meal I served her. I feel like her hunger just comes from boredom. I know she's
Mhm.
not hungry, but dang, if I hear I'm hungry one more time, how do you handle snacks at your house with little ones?
Oh, I am in the snack phase. Let me tell you, with a 10-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 2-year-old, everyone always wants a snack. So I feel your pain, Nina. This is Vanessa, you said maybe what's for dinner is your least favorite question. What can I have for a snack is
Can I
my
have a
least
snack?
favorite question.
Can I have a snack?
So this is what has been working best for us. And this is actually something I implemented last summer because I find that the snacking questions are the most prevalent in my home during those summer months when there's more, when everyone's at home a little bit more. So it's tricky. I get concerned about restricting food in any capacity, right? Because I want my kids to have a healthy relationship with food and I want them to learn how to listen to their bodies. And if they're hungry, I want them to be able to have something. But it's tricky. And I totally understand what Nina's saying. You just ate. I think you're bored. You're not hungry. So, one thing that's helped us is we have a fridge snack bin. So, there's literally one of those acrylic bins in my refrigerator that says snacks. And when my kids ask for a snack and they have eaten 45 minutes earlier, and I think it might be from boredom, I usually say, you can have a fridge snack. Because usually the snacks that are found in the fridge are a lot more healthy than the snacks that are found in the pantry.
Mhm.
So in our fridge bin, it's like string cheese, the yogurt tubes, apples, carrots, things like that. So I'm saying yes, you can have a snack, but it's a healthier snack without me calling it a healthy snack.
Yeah.
And so that is something that's really worked well in my family. Now the kids know the difference between a pantry snack and a fridge snack. But when I realize that maybe someone's just a little bored, it's a fridge snack. So hopefully that helps, Nina. But just hang in there, right? It's the
Yeah.
snacking year. It's the
And
snacking
again,
years.
kids go through phases of,
Mhm.
their snackiness. But it's so frustrating when you feel like they just snack all day long and then they're not ready to
I
actually eat
know.
the meal that you have planned and prepped and prepared.
Yes. Yeah, the other thing that we've done is I have, for a while we're using like a dinner bell and when kids are home during the summer, we'll use it for lunch. And they would get so excited when it's like, is it time for dinner? Is it time for lunch? And they'd ring the bell. So I don't know that that's like a great tip for everyone, but if you can gamify it in some way about when we have meal times and when we have snack times, I
Yeah.
think that can be a nice way for young kids as well. Or set a timer with your smart device or whatever. And when the timer goes off, that means dinner's in 10 minutes, something like that. But a first line of defense for me has been the fridge snack.
Fridge bin. Okay, I love it. Great tips. I polled our audience about what the biggest pain point is around feeding our families.
Mhm.
51% said meal planning.
Mhm.
26% actually making the meal, which I thought was interesting. I
Yeah.
expected that to be flipped. So, meal planning, just like I said, having to have that answer of what's for dinner every single day can be exhausting.
Yeah.
And especially here we are at the beginning of a new year, and we all probably want to do better, make more nutritious, more homemade meals. A lot of us are pulling back on the budget. We know that it can be
Mhm.
financially better for our pocketbook to be cooking at home, but the grind can be exhausting. Here's a question from Julie. She says, I'm realizing that I have an actual mental block about planning and making dinners. It's something I want to be able to do and have done in the past, but the last 2 months, it's all I can do to show up in other ways. Does anyone have an easy way to meal plan and or access to easy recipes? So
Yeah.
tell us what works for you and your family.
Well, I want to tell Julie that even someone who has spent the better part of 20 years in a career of trying to help families get dinner on the table, I still find myself frustrated by the never ending hamster wheel of putting meals on the table. And so she's not alone. She's not doing anything wrong. I think we go through periods of burnout, just like we do with the laundry. I mean, I don't know that anyone really loves the laundry, but
No,
other
but it's
household
always there.
tasks, right? It's always there. And as you're raising kids, you've at least got, well, I don't know, Vanessa, you're towards the end, but still, you got to eat every single day. And so this is what I'm going to say. When you have a task that is not going away, it's a task worth investing in creating a system around, especially one that is so involved. Making dinner is not just deciding what to make, it's deciding, then purchasing the groceries, then getting the groceries in the house, then actually cooking the meal, then hoping your kids will eat it, then cleaning up. There are so many different steps, and that's why it feels so exhausting. So, what I'm going to tell Julie and everyone really is that you need to accept that planning is going to help you. And I think that planning is the hardest part, accepting that you need to have a plan. And if you sit down and make the plan, it's going to be the biggest gift to yourself. This is my suggestion for getting started, is picking the same time every week, or maybe it's twice a week, to execute making a meal plan. Think of it almost like an exercise class, right? Maybe you're trying to move your body more, and so you sign up to go to Pilates on Tuesday and Thursday mornings. Because you've signed up for the class, you're more motivated to do it. Now, I don't know that you need to sign up for a meal planning class, but what I do recommend is setting aside a certain time, the same time every single week, to ask yourself once, what are we having for dinner? So that you're not
Yeah.
asking yourself every single day, what are we having for dinner? So, what that looks like for me is setting aside this time. It's Thursday nights at 9 p.m. And that may be a terrible time for some people. For me, that happens to be the right time. On Thursdays, one of my favorite podcasts comes out. And so I habit stack, or I take something that I like doing, listening to that podcast, with something that I don't like doing, meal planning. Yes, even I
You
don't love
don't
meal
like meal
planning.
planning?
Well, I just
That's
look,
comforting to know.
it is. We are real people, and it's okay if you don't like it, but you still got to do it because you got to feed your family.
Yeah.
So I tend to do those things at the exact same time. And sometimes I sit down and I meal plan and I realize, oh, we've got a baseball tournament this week and a ballet recital, and we're traveling. Oh, I only need to make one meal this week. Okay, so then we do it. I'm a big fan of grocery pickup, and so I
Yep.
typically decide what we're going to make. I make my list, I place my order, and then I pick up my groceries at the same time every week. So it's a system.
Mhm.
And it's the hardest part is going to be developing that system. But every week you do that system, it's going to get a little bit easier and it's going to feel a bit more manageable. The last thing I'll say to Julie is that I have found that recipes are this category that is highly saturated. There are probably millions of recipes on the internet. And then you've got cookbooks and you've got your family recipes. If you are in a chapter of life or a season of life where things feel overwhelming, my suggestion is to pick a guide or two or three and get your recipes from one place so that you're not spending so much time looking for the perfect solution in lots of different places. Because I think that creates decision fatigue and it makes the process feel even more frustrating. So find a guide that you like. If you have certain dietary restrictions, find someone like my friend Danielle Walker is amazing at a paleo diet. Okay, she's great. She could be a guide for that. If you're looking for easy meals with less than 10 ingredients that are perfect for families, Recipe Club could be a great thing for you. If you are like a foodie and you want to hit that passion with cooking, maybe Cooks Illustrated or America's Test Kitchen is a good fit for you. But pick a guide so that you don't spend so much time looking in 25 different places for recipes.
Yeah. I remember like a busy phase of our family's life when all my kids were little, I literally just wrote down all of my favorite things and all the
Yeah.
things that kids love, and it was a shorter list than, all the recipes in my
Yeah.
cookbooks in my cupboard, but I just rotated through those because I didn't have to think. I knew they liked them. I knew how to I
Yeah.
could even, like, shop for them without even looking at it because I knew in my head, what we needed, and that
Exactly.
kinda took that mental fatigue out.
Yeah, I have a list in my phone, in my notes, called the greatest hits. And that's where our greatest hits recipes go. And so if I am feeling that block of like, I have no idea, like I'll hear from my recipe club members a lot. I don't mind cooking. I just hate deciding what to
Mhm.
make. And when you have those weeks when you just don't want to decide, going to a greatest hits list, or lots of people have like a recipe binder where they take that greatest hits list and they print out all of those recipes and they put them in the binder. The binder's a great solution for when you just can't. Now, there'll be
Yeah.
times when it's Valentine's Day and you want to do a special meal for your kids and you get excited about that creative pursuit of a recipe. But when you're just trying to keep your head above water, stick to what you know.
It's so good. So what is your favorite thing to make for dinner on a busy weeknight?
My favorite thing to make for dinner is something that my entire family will eat. And
Yeah.
I know that
Whatever it
kind of
is.
whatever it is. Right now, no, I really do love cooking, but I also recognize that I am in a phase of life where I'm just being pulled in so many different directions. But right now, a hit for us is I'm going to say two. So I have a baked ziti that is probably my most popular recipe, and it is definitely my son's favorite, and my daughter Penny loves it. And it's great because I can easily make two and stick one in the freezer. And so if I go to the effort of making it once, I get a 2-for-1 meal. One goes in the freezer and one I can bake off for my family, and it always yields leftovers. So I like that recipe so much because not only is it delicious, but it also solves some problems for me. I almost
Mhm.
get 3 meals out of it. So baked ziti, huge fan of that. And then I'm a big proponent of sheet pan meals,
Yeah.
anything to make cleanup easier, have everything live in one place. And my daughter Nora loves, I have a sheet pan pretzel chicken that's really popular with some veggies.
Pretzels. All
Yes, so you
right.
grind up the pretzels and it coats the chicken and it gives it like a little salty sweet vibe, and it is so yummy. So she is so stoked on that recipe right now. And she's my toughest one when it comes to picky eaters. And so I do enjoy making that because I know that it's going to be a fun, positive food experience for her, and she kind of feels like I'm doing something a little special for her. So those are two of my favorites right now.
Yeah, I love sheet pan dinners, and
Mhm.
if ever it's possible to double and have it put it in the freezer or put it in the
Yes.
fridge, or even sometimes I'll take it to someone who, like, might be sick or their
Yes.
family's sick. Work smarter, not harder. I love that so
Yep.
much. What about freezer meals? Are you a fan of freezer meals?
I'm a fan of freezer meals occasionally. I'm not necessarily a fan of eating a freezer meal every night of the week or even multiple nights of the week. And I think they're fantastic. Like I just told you, I love my baked ziti where I put that in as a freezer meal. I also love doing some batch cooking occasionally when I know it's going to be a crazy month. But I do think freezer meals can start to kind of feel one note occasionally. And
Yeah.
granted, there are better recipes than others, but I
And by
don't.
freezer meals, I mean, like,
Yeah.
prepping, like, in a big Ziploc. This is all the things
Yeah,
you need to dump
yeah,
into a crock pot, and they can be
totally.
convenient, but yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, and there's certain things you can do, like adding some fresh elements, whether it's fresh cilantro and lime and something crispy on top to kind of create some of that texture in those things. But I have been someone who's fallen into a period of like, that's it. I'm making 30 freezer meals and cooking
Mhm.
for the month.
Yep.
But then by about day 6, I'm like, oh, this is all tasting the same. So
Yeah.
I'm a fan of a freezer meal maybe once a week or every other week or something like that. Um, and it also just depends on your season of life.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I have 2 really good friends who I don't get to see very often, but we would set aside a time, like, every 3 months or so to get together, and we would make freezer meals because it felt like we were being productive, but we could also
Yeah.
chat and catch up, and, like, I totally experienced what you were talking about. They get old and kind of bland
Yeah.
after using them day after day, but it was nice to have in the back pocket for a busy night and just be able to, "Oh, I'm just gonna pop that out of the freezer." So,
Absolutely.
okay, if you had to choose one of these, which one and why? Instant Pot, crock pot, or air fryer?
This
Or
is
are all 3 necessary? I use
okay.
all 3, but I would love to get
That's
your
great.
take on that.
No, I love it. I've got opinions, Vanessa.
Okay, let's hear
So
it.
it's a little bit of a toss up between my slow cooker and my air fryer. But let's first talk about the Instant Pot. I am not the biggest fan of the Instant Pot. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't think other people should not love it, embrace it, and use it. I just enjoy the creative process of cooking, even when it's chaotic. And to me, the Instant Pot is like a science experiment. You put everything in, you push a button, you cross your
It's
fingers,
true.
and you hope it works out. And so that kind of takes out some of what I like about cooking. Even with the slow cooker, I can lift up the lid and see if the meat's getting tender, and I have that aroma that smells so good in my house. So I also, my kids are young and I don't have a super big family. And so I think an
Mm,
instant pot can be great when you're doing like batch protein cooking and things like that. And currently for my family, I don't have that need as much as some other people may have. So instant pot is the easiest one for me to set aside. I own one, but I haven't touched it in a while. The slow cooker I love for Sunday pot roast and shredded pork and shredded beef tacos. But it does require, even though it's easy, it requires some advanced planning, right? Because
mhm.
that's really got to go for a couple of hours. The air fryer, though, my goodness, I think of all of the gadgets that have come out in the past couple of years, the air fryer takes the cake for me. Just that it produces such delicious, crispy, tasty food so quickly. And it really does a lot for some of those mundane kids' foods. Like a dino nugget out of an air fryer is substantially better than a dino nugget out of the
But is
microwave.
it healthier for
I know,
you?
I
I don't
know.
know.
That's what's so crazy.
Uh,
So, but honestly, what I use my air fryer for most are side veggies at
okay.
dinner, because I love taking, whether it's some French green beans or even Brussels sprouts, which I can convince my kids to eat, or broccoli. And I have this great tool. It's like an oil spritzer.
Oh,
And so
yeah.
you put olive oil like in a little spritzer, and I spritz it and I give it a little salt, pepper. Sometimes I'll do a lemon pepper. And because of the way an air fryer works, you get that crispiness with the tenderness.
Mm.
And I'm just convinced it's the most delicious way to cook vegetables. So I mentioned the dino nugget, but honestly, the thing I use it most for is vegetables. So I just want to
Well,
clear my name there.
hey, all I use our air fryer for is reheating pizza. Um,
Yeah.
but veggies, because the last 2 nights I have steamed veggies in the microwave because I've
Uh-huh.
been out of time and I wanted to have a veggie on the side, but I don't really love steamed broccoli
Mm-mm.
that way. I should have put it in the air fryer. I'm gonna try
Yes.
that next time because I
Because
love.
Vanessa, it takes the same amount of time as the microwave.
Well,
It's
so that's
so
why I go to the
fast.
microwave because I really prefer my broccoli roasted in the oven,
Yeah.
but I didn't have time for it. But the air fryer, okay, you are blowing my mind. I'm so
You got to report back. I am telling you,
okay, I will.
air fryer broccoli is so delicious. I might even prefer over oven roasted, because I swear it gets even crispier. So,
Ah,
yes,
I'm
use
excited to try it.
go beyond the leftover pizza, which, by the way, leftover pizza is best in an air fryer, just in
Yes.
case no one's ever tried it. And the chicken nuggets, and try doing your veggies in your air fryer, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised.
Oh, you're awesome. I love how relatable you are, and, it can be really intimidating to be like, "We're talking to the star of Food
Oh,
Network
stop.
show." Like, she's got it all figured out. Thank you for
No.
sharing so many of your secret tips and tricks. Can you just give us a little bit behind the scenes about one of the cooking segments you did, and tell us, like, what was one of the most difficult things you had to do? We just wanna relate on this
Oh,
human
man.
level.
This is a great question. So I have been on many of the shows. I have been on Chopped a couple of times. Unfortunately, I cannot tell you that I have won Chopped. I have always lost Chopped. But it is, like, you think it looks hard sitting on your couch and watching. I think being on Chopped is hands down the hardest thing I've ever had to do.
So stressful.
My first time being on Chopped, I'll never forget opening my first basket, and there was a fully cooked goose. My first ingredient was
A
a goose.
goose?
A goose. Like a Christmas
Oh
goose.
my
I have never had that in my entire life. I didn't know what to do with it. I was pregnant at the time, so I had this, and I just was like, "What am I doing? This is so crazy." But so I've been on Chopped. I've been on Guys Grocery Games, which I love being on that show. That is such a fun show to do. It reminds me of Supermarket Sweep that I used to watch.
Yeah.
Growing. Did you ever watch that?
Yeah, yeah. Uh-huh.
Oh, the best. I've been on a show called Cutthroat Kitchen that's hosted by Alton Brown. But I'm actually, to answer the question, I'm going to go back to one of the first challenges I ever did on food television, which was on that Food Network Star show that I did way back in 2008. And we had been told the challenge was make a product that you could put in a jar or a bottle that represents your culinary point of view. And at the time, I was this kid fresh out of
Wow.
college, and I wanted to teach college kids how to cook. Anyways, and so I came up with this thing called the all-in-one sauce, and it was going to be a tomato-based sauce that could skew sweet but also savory, so you could serve it with pasta, or you could do a sloppy joe or something like that. And we'd been told that there was going to be a mystery guest who was going to taste all of our different products and then pick a winner. And no one knew who it was, but we had to make this product, jar it, and then wait for the guest to arrive. And lo and behold, the guest was Martha Stewart. And I was fresh off interning for Martha's company for 2 summers before that. So they kind of had a storyline there. And I
Mhm.
really admired Martha and all of that. And she comes to my table, and I had made sloppy joes with my all-in-one sauce. And let me tell you what, Martha Stewart's probably not a fan of a sloppy joe. She looked at my sloppy joes and she said, "Can I have a fork?" And I was like, "Don't have a fork for you." And so everyone had to ruffle around and try, and Martha finally got a fork to taste my sloppy joe mixture. And I thought, my one chance to feed Martha Stewart something, and I feed her a sloppy Joe. And
Oh,
anyways,
well,
I've never
she's missing out.
miss
If she hasn't
it out.
had the joy of picking up a big
I
sloppy Joe and
I
digging into
know.
it, I'm sorry, Martha, you're missing out.
Oh, anyways, so
That's
maybe another
awesome.
time I'll get to feed her marmalade or something.
I love it. All right, Kelsey, I'd love to switch gears right now. And I couldn't have you on the podcast without having you share your incredible journey of becoming a mother. And
Sure.
for anyone listening, I recommend go to Kelsey's Instagram and watch the highlights. She's done a highlight for her children and her pregnancy and birth stories. But I wanted to share with you this post, which was actually posted anonymously on our MomForce Facebook group. It says, I have a good friend that reached out to me the other day, letting me know that she was feeling very lost and alone and is unsure what her purpose is if she can't have children. She's been struggling with infertility issues for years and is unable to have any children of her own. She's scared to adopt and doesn't know if she can afford that. She feels like she's running out of time now that she's 40 years old, and I want to help her. I'm just not sure what to do or say. I think she should I think she could benefit from seeing an infertility therapist. Do you have any suggestions for her? Kelsey, what is your advice for those who are in the trenches of infertility?
Yeah, so building my family was not, it didn't work the good old fashioned way. So we experienced two micro preemies, an infant loss, being told that it wasn't safe for me to carry future pregnancies, gestational surrogacy. Like we've checked most of the boxes when it comes to navigating building a family. And with that came so much heartache, frustration, financial sacrifice, physical sacrifice, emotional sacrifice. It just was unbelievably exhausting. So I feel for her friend, and it can feel so lonely. And my best advice in supporting someone who's going through that and really seeing that pain that they're experiencing is to encourage them to find a support network where they're surrounded by other people who are experiencing something similar. It wasn't until I found and it doesn't have to be a lot of people. It can, and really it can just be one. The hardest thing I went through was losing my son, who was born at 25 weeks and lived for about a month before passing away due to complications from his prematurity in the NICU, and simultaneously being told that it wasn't safe for me to carry future pregnancies. And it was unbelievably lonely. My sister, who I'm very close to, was pregnant at the same time as me. We had due dates within a few days of each other. So I had this sister that I loved who was experiencing this pregnancy that I was supposed to be experiencing with her. And it wasn't until I found someone who had also lost a baby, and figured out how to still grow their family, that I really felt seen. And I really just, it was like a big warm hug to find that
Mm,
person. So you can only do so much when you can't totally relate. And my
yeah.
advice to her is the best thing to always say when someone opens up their heart to you and you can't relate is, I'm so sorry. I am so sorry. I love you. I am so sorry. But I would maybe encourage your friend to look in places where she might find some people who are going through similar things. And there's no better time to do that than with social media at our fingertips, right? It may be as simple as searching hashtags on Instagram, or looking for Facebook groups, or looking for therapists who specialize in certain areas. That can be a more expensive route, which I also experienced. But finding someone who knows what it feels like to be you a little bit. And then also, those people are likely, should you be wanting to pursue a solution or research out different ways that you could build your family, that's going to be the best place for you to find those resources, because those people are all doing the same thing, as opposed to you, who maybe doesn't have to do that research because you're able to build your family in a more traditional way. So support, I love you, I'm so sorry, and let's get you to a group, or let's find you some friends who can experience, who know what it feels like to go through what you're going through.
Yeah, that's such great advice. And you've been through it all, Kelsey. So
Mm-hmm.
that comes from
Yeah.
deep experience. And I love that you mentioned that your sister was, pregnant at the same time and going through
Mhm.
what you had hoped that you'd go through together. And it leads me to this question from Jeanette from the MomForce. She says, I've been struggling with guilt this pregnancy for friends and family members that I know that have been trying to get pregnant and dealing with infertility or pregnancy loss. I just feel like, why do I get to be pregnant when they are trying just as hard? With social media, the awareness of loss and fertility is much higher, and I find myself feeling consumed with empathy and sadness for those that I know dealing with it. My hormones are not helping with the weepiness that this is causing me to have, but I guess I'm curious if you have any advice.
Oh, Jeanette, you sweet, deeply feeling person. I just you're right. This is and I had a front row seat to this in my sister. In fact, it she was such a beautiful example of how one could positively conduct themselves in such a sensitive situation because she was still pregnant and she went on to have this baby. um, the first thing she did is she came to me and she said, I love you so much and I want to do the right thing, but I don't know what the right thing is. Do you want me to talk about it? Do you want me to not talk about it? And we just had an open conversation and kind of established an open line of communication where it was like, right now, I'm okay with you talking about it. And I'm okay with, I threw her a baby shower. I still want to do this. I still want to throw you a baby shower. But if I had been in a place 2 days before that baby shower where I needed to call her up and say, I can't do this, she would have been okay with that. So I think it's having a line of communication where you can go back and forth, because as hard as it is to watch family members and friends go through infertility, as someone who's been on the side of that, I still genuinely felt so much joy for my friends who are having babies. Not every day, not all the time, but I had more moments of feeling that joy for them. I don't think it's safe to assume that they don't want to hear about your pregnancy or the joy you feel about it. But I do think it's important to communicate and to ask sensitively and give them the space when they need it without being frustrated when they can't be there for you.
Yeah.
But one of my greatest experiences, and I lost my son in March, and my niece was born in June. That's when my son was supposed to be born. And I was so broken, but I had this impression and this feeling that I needed to be at the birth of her daughter. And
Mm,
she had, my niece, and she had invited me to do so. And some people may think, why in the, it was the same hospital where I had lost my son, same doctor. Why in the world would you expose yourself to that? But I wanted to be there, and it was so healing for me. And it was such a happy day for me. So, my advice to Jeanette is really to not make assumptions and to ask and communicate with people you know that are close to you, because also my guess is they don't want you to hide your excitement for your pregnancy. There might be certain times, but communication is key.
yeah. And I'm sure it's different for every person.
Yeah.
Um, and as you were talking, I mean, I haven't been through even a fraction of what you've been through, Kelsey, but I did. I lost a pregnancy at 20 weeks, and that wasn't anything I ever expected to happen. And I hadn't told very many people because, my mom had told me to be cautious and just
Yeah.
wait. And it was my second pregnancy, and I just thought I would keep it a secret longer. But to have to go through that loss so alone, like, I just felt like that was a lot to, it
Yeah.
was just, it's a lot. And I'm so grateful that you shared your point of view, because I think we all could use a little more help in looking how to empathize and to meet people where they are, and to connect even through the hard things. So thank you so
Yeah,
much for
and
that.
honestly, it was great. I had my people who had experienced what I had experienced, and there were times when I needed to tap in to that community, and then there were other times when I loved this niece of mine, and to this day she's 7 now, and I have such happy memories, or I have such happy feelings looking at her and thinking, what would my son Leo be doing? He'd be turning 8 this year. Oh my god, like it's actually a happy thing for me.
Yeah.
And I think that's because I've allowed my sister to share in that happiness and not sit in that sadness and anger. And that's taken a lot of work to get there. But I really felt like Leo, my son, he would not want me to live that way. And so that's what really motivated me to do that work, to try and get to a place where I could be really happy for my sister and watch this little girl grow up and celebrate her. And so I consider that a gift from my son Leo. And it's truly one of the greatest joys in my life.
Yeah, I love that. Well, Kelsey, you are a light and a delight, and I feel so blessed to know you. Where can people find more about you and everything you're doing and Recipe Club?
Yeah. Well, you can find me on Instagram. I'm Kelsey Nixon on Instagram, and there I share lots of tips, techniques, tools, recipes to help you get dinner on the table for your families. If you are interested in recipes and weekly and monthly meal plans, I have a recipe club that we'll make sure you guys get an awesome discount to. Um,
Yeah, we'll post that
and
in the show notes. So look
yes,
at the show notes. We'll have a little
but
discount.
we have a great time in Recipe Club. It's a fantastic community. And then, should anyone have any specific questions about growing families, I know this is kind of crazy, but I have met so many wonderful people who have been in a unique situation like I am, where they're not able to have their own kids anymore. And if anyone ever has a question, you can always send me an email or a DM, and I will do my best to offer up some advice, because I know how broken it can feel to be in that situation. And it's been a really beautiful thing communicating and meeting people along the way who are navigating that.
Well, you are so generous. That's so kind of you. Thank you so much. And another shout out about your recipe club. So, yeah, we'll put a discount in the show notes. Stay tuned for maybe a giveaway for a subscription to
Yes.
Recipe Club, along with the month book subscription. And I just want to say what I love about your recipes, not only are they great and they're easy and everyone always loves them, but you always include like a section for substitutions or
Yeah.
just a way to work smarter and not harder.
Yeah, and even we do one thing that's popular in the club is we do a parent plate and a picky eater plate, and that's
Yep.
highly influenced by the fact that I live with a picky eater right now. And so we give an example of how to deconstruct every recipe in Recipe Club in case you are dealing with a kid who refuses to have food touch one another like my child does.
We've all been there.
It's all a phase. She's coming out of it. We're getting there, but yeah, it's created for people who are trying to feed their families and do it with a bit more ease and enjoyment.
Well, thank you for helping us do that very thing. That's what we all want, and you're the best.
All right, thanks so much for having me, Vanessa.